Have you ever wondered why people kiss at weddings?
You may now kiss the bride.
And why a marriage ceremony doesn't feel complete without a kiss? And do you know what men spend several times a week thinking of? All paths weirdly lead to the Roman Empire. Despite all the bloodshed and the violence that made them one of the most successful empires in the world, they were a surprisingly kissy bunch. From kissing their family members on the lips to check if they've been drinking, but also as a sign of respect and admiration, to soldiers kissing at wartime and sometimes falling in love, which supposedly gives them more courage on the battlefield, to, weirdly, sealing a contract with a kiss. Now, just to clarify, this wasn't just a wedding contract, this was any contract. Bit weird, but the reason why is, despite being hugely successful, giving us a justice system and having exceptionally elaborate infrastructure like sewage systems, they were a largely illiterate bunch, and so they relied on this public and noticeable gesture to seal the contract. It is not something that you do with everyone, so there is a kind of layer of trust that's embedded into it when you kiss someone. This wasn't just any kiss. The Romans had many different kinds, and they would distinguish the formality of the contract by using a formal kind of kiss. Most legal rituals faded as contracts became written in private, but this one survived at weddings, where, as marriage became romantic, the kiss kept its power as a public symbol. So that's the reason, but if you wanted to get deeper, like I did when I fell into my small rabbit hole, you'd ask, why do humans even kiss to begin with? Is it innate, you might ask? Think back to your first kiss. You might recall a wave of social pressure urging you towards a lover, or you might have found that you were just really curious. If you answered innate, you'd have pretty good grounding to stand on, because turns out our lips have the most amount of nerve endings than any part of your body bar your genitals. A good way of saying that. Which means we're like really overly sensitive there and have been for the longest time. You might see babies on the tube just jamming things in their mouth, and you're like, holy hell, you're gonna become super ill because that's gross. But the reason why they do that is because you learn with your mouth. To prove that, somebody actually told me something cool recently, which is you can look at any object in the world and you'll know what it feels like to lick it. Just give that a little whirl in your spare time. Secondly, there's a biological argument, which is that supposedly we have pheromones everywhere, and when you kiss somebody, it's like you're sampling your mate's pheromones, which tests for your biological compatibility. Yeah, interesting. Thirdly, and potentially the worst level of science around this, but interesting nonetheless, some anthropologists have called our lips our genital echo. Women's lips can sometimes reflect what's going on down there. Minute changes in shape, texture, and colour will happen during the fertile part of their cycle. So it only makes sense that men might be attracted to that. To answer the innate question, you might want to trace back when was the earliest kiss ever discovered or written about. No one needs to know when, right?
I think loop it back to the Romans and then to weddings.
Yeah. I was going to. I've got such a good link. This is really cool though. So the origins of the kiss. Okay, theory goes that we have these things called sebaceous glands just under our eyes, and they release this kind of like oil that gives us our distinct smell. So they thought that maybe we started off by just trying to sniff under our eyes, like sniff other people to see whether we like them. And then when they're going from like one side to the other, your lips would basically accidentally touch. Now you might ask, when was the first kiss documented? There were reports around 4,500 years ago in Mesopotamia. There were reports in ancient Vedic texts 2,500 years ago in India. So it's clear that ancient society used to do it, including the Romans, which is why it's very much reflected in our wedding traditions and very much not reflected in the rest of the world. In fact, it turns out that in one famous 2015 anthropological study that looked at 168 cultures throughout the world to better understand where kissing comes from, they found that fewer than half of all cultures surveyed engaged in kissing. Romantic kissing was most prevalent in the Middle East, where all 10 of the cultures studied engaged in it. In North America, 55% of cultures engaged, along with 70% in Europe and 73% in Asia. However, there was no evidence of kissing in Central America or Sub-Saharan African, New Guinean or Amazonian foragers. Garcia reported that the more socially complex and stratified a society is, the higher the frequency of romantic kissing. Yeah, I know. How cool is that? That's not to say that they don't have their own quirky wedding traditions. Whether it's in China, a bride getting shot by her groom with arrows, in the Congo, the couple never smiling to show that they're serious about weddings, or in Cuba where they pin money to the bride's dress. You gotta love humans.